I'm back to my same old ways. I swear I try to change, but you just feel so right when I do wrong. So right along.
We're just cracking open part 2 of episode 8, Harder Than Healing. I'm Jason. I'm the playwright.
I'm Nathaniel. I'm clinician.
I'm Don Malloy, the Green Beret.
Kyle Quincey, hockey player, now advocate.
Nice.
Yeah, that
Right
works.
on.
Yeah, I like it.
Slipped right in there, huh?
Yeah,
So
rolled off the tongue.
it really did.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle and Malloy and Nathaniel. There is this thing that I don't remember people saying when I was watching sports as a kid, and I just hear constantly now. And that is people be watching sports and let's say there's a play and the technical execution fails. It could be a missed pass, don't score on a breakaway, goalie doesn't save it, whatever it may be. And the people around me will always say, oh, he's got to make that catch. Oh, he's got to stay on side. And I wonder if that bothers you guys the way it bothers me, but it's like, got to? Like for who? Like for them to stay in the first team? Maybe, I suppose, yeah. If they made that mistake again and again and again, if they want to stay in the starting lineup, they need to make that show. But like in that one instance, if they don't do it, like it just feels like a very entitled thing to say. Like somehow the fan is like, well, I've invested in this emotionally, so you have to deliver. Because if you don't deliver, I'm wasting my time rooting for you. That's just how I hear it. I'm curious what your take is.
That's the fan is why we have a job, and that is my job to have that play. So do I take offense to it? Absolutely not. That's my job. That's what I should be doing, have to do. And if I don't do it or perform, we say in hockey, we're in the business of winning. If we don't, you're not doing your job, and they'll find somebody else. But the fan, they make my career, they make my job. So they have they're allowed to say that. They're allowed to scream. They come to the game. They can say what they want. To be honest, within a certain realm.
Dude, I love that answer so much. There's a reason why I didn't go pro. There are many reasons, but that probably the fact that I don't have Kyle's mentality is the number one reason. That's an awesome answer.
Thick skin.
Well, the other piece to it too, at least the way I feel, and I won't speak to sports in general because I never played professional sports, but like on a team, you feel like you're responsible to your teammates as well, right? So like you're probably, for me, saying it to myself, I'd probably be like, man, I should have made that catch. You know, so it didn't even make me who cares about the guy in the stands? I mean, I'm going to have way more criticism for myself than that fan will ever, but he might say it and I'd be like, dude, you're so right. Man, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I got to make that look a lot better.
Good players, the people at that highest level, they're the hardest critique.
Yeah.
Like really, other than the coach, other than just telling us when to be here, doesn't really do much. It's, we're performing for our families. In our career, it's not because of him yelling.
So then let me ask you this, though. Holding yourself to that standard, remind our listeners, how many years your career?
14.
That's a long time to have that mentality. And obviously you had to have the mentality coming up in order to get to that level. So does that mentality, and I imagine that's got to be the same mentality in military service, right? There's got to be a lot of got-tos going through your head. Tiffany Morgan's nodding her head.
Well, and I'm thinking, and I guarantee anybody that plays anything or does anything at a high level is going to have a higher standard than a lot of people around them. You know, so it's like,
that's fair.
You're going to be your worst critic. So there was a quote by Bernie Williams, who played for the Yankees.
Oh.
And he was saying one of the things that he recognized so much about professional sports is that everybody out there was wildly talented. And so he said, so I focused on me, right? I focused on my temperament. I focused on my attitude. You know, day in, day out, I would work as hard as I could, knowing that everybody else is just exceptionally talented. So, you know, you're finding the very little tiny ounce of whatever you can squeeze out of it to make yourself better.
So this now ultimately is my follow-up question to that, which is having that mindset. Does that fuck you up?
Well, I'll tell us. So, for instance, actually, good games would mess me up more. But, you know, we play a 7 or 8 o'clock game, about 3 hours of work. You have commitments for media and, you know, workout and preparing for the next day. You know, back in the day, they didn't have chefs and stuff, so I'm going to, you know, hot dog stands in Detroit or whatever just to get any sort of food, whatever was open. Get home around 12:30. Have a regimen of probably a couple beers and some Ambien to go to sleep. Because if I didn't, I would replay every single shift, and the adrenaline was so high, I wouldn't sleep. And that again, that the issue there is performance the next day, and owing, you know, to your brothers to get that rest to perform at your best. So that overcritical self is an issue, and it's that fine line, just like anything else in life. But it's that fine line that drives you to be that perfection that you'll never get, but it's never good enough to it not consuming you to the point where you can't recover. So it's that fine line, and that's what I, you know, learning now what I know now. But, you know, instead of using Ambien and other stuff, of using plant-based medicine would help find that medium. Is what I would advocate for the guys playing now, is to get off the pharmaceutical stuff, and because really the teams, their job is to make you play better the next day. It's not for you to thrive when you're 55, but that's that middle ground that's the key. That's performance.
Well, and I think I would say, like in the military sense, right? Like, I think everybody's just super critical. And so while you say this, there's a couple of things that I just want to throw out so that the audience can get this feel, because I'm a guy that did military, right, at a high level. You're a guy who played sports at a high level. And there's this piece of when I hear athletes talking about, I'm looking for the right word, but I guess analogous to or similarities to war. And I know a lot of my veterans are like, what the fuck do they know about war and blah, blah. And I'm thinking like, yeah, well, what the fuck do we know about playing professional sports, right? So I want to let the audience know, like, this is a conversation that we're going to have, that I want to make sure that we're going to, like, I don't want people to get uncomfortable about us using certain terms, right? It's kind of like what we were talking earlier about, like, wanting to get to that threshold.
Yeah.
And being able to say and ask and get into some of this conversation. So going back to it though, like when you perform at a high standard, or when you're supposed to perform at a high standard, I mean, you have to be overcritical, right? Like if you weren't performing at that high standard, you wouldn't be overcritical. At some point, the internal dialogue is like, you need to be better. And for me, like I was a commander. I didn't have to shoot as good as my other guys, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to return fire before I do, right? I'm the one who's on the comms, and I'm calling in different things and making sure that my people back in headquarters know what's going on, and trying to work through the plan in my head and all that kind of other stuff. But don't mistake that, like, that night before a mission, right? Potentially the night before a game, like I'm running through everything in my head. Like, did I miss something? Is somebody going to be in harm's way? Did I do everything I need to do? And I'll tell you right now, full blown, straight out, like I was on one mission in particular, and my brain was in an absolute fog. We had just been in a 24-hour TIC, troops in contact, and we got into a plane, into a Chinook. We move over to another section. We get down on the ground, and I'm not going to lie to you, I had no idea where I was. I mean, I knew exactly where I was in my head and on the plan, but geographically had no idea. And I remember I went to one of my, I think it was my JTAC at the time, and said like, hey, where are we? Do you know how embarrassing that is for a commander to not know where he is? So I replayed that in my head for months. So critical, absolutely. But I'll bet you if I ask Kyle, like during the middle of a season, if I told you not to be so critical, you'd be like, what are you smoking? Like you have to be.
Yeah, we'd have like the best game ever, and you'd still drive to the rink the next day, and there'd be an hour video of just breaking down the little smallest. But that was what makes you to be the best. But yeah, there wasn't that guy being like, "Dude, you're doing a great job."
Well, do you think that would have been nice?
See, I don't know. Like I was all about performance and not worrying about mental health per se at that point, but knowing what I know now, the mental health is a giant part of performance. But I made my kind of career under the radar. In defense, you say like if you weren't noticed, you played great, right?
Right.
But it was almost more when you made the paper, like this guy's doing great. It's just like you start kind of drinking your own cocktail a little bit, then you fall off a bit. So I was just trying to stay in between the ditches there a little bit. So that was my goal.
Nathaniel, I'm wondering, because I'm thinking about, as a teacher, Kyle, the night you're describing, right, where you're all wound up, right? Now, obviously, the timetable for a pro athlete playing an evening game is a lot different than, all right, my school day is ended at 4 p.m. But I know there were definitely days where I replayed, like, man, I let that kid down. Like, that kid needed me, and I could have said the right thing, and in the moment I didn't. And I would beat myself up. Like, the next day couldn't come soon enough.
So,
you know what I mean?
So I have found tools, within this plant medicine space.
Yeah, 'cause we got to hear more about that.
I'm in now, but the biggest thing that one of the comments that one of the guys said to us is, I finally let myself forgive myself for some of the stuff. And you're talking about letting a kid down. I'm talking about maybe missing an easy goal or falling down and letting them score. And it's kind of like how, and again, those are small things, but there could be one giant trauma or one thing that people carry around and feel guilt for years and years. And using these tools of, large doses of psilocybin, for instance, and other psychedelics, but the feedback of saying, for the first time, I let myself forgive myself and start loving myself again. And it's like, wow, like what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
What an amazing tool.
Yeah.
So kind of what we're talking about, that's a microcosm of it, but you just try to find tools and then provide education on how it's helped me and my other fellow hockey guys and other military guys.
Well, that self-acceptance piece is huge because of being so critical, right? Because you always are performing at that level where it's of the utmost importance for you to be present in that game. And then at the same time, not taking care of your mental health, ironically enough, ends up impacting what it is you're doing in the first place.
Like we call it being in the now,
Right.
Like the present. If, and like that ultimate performance when it's like everything slows down and everything playing golf, the hole's this big and you can't miss. This is just everything just smooth. You got to drop yesterday, like almost golf's a perfect example. You had a bad shot, kind of like analyze it, what happened. All right, gone. You can never get that back. You got to be now, your next shot, be totally present. If I get scored on in a game and I let that eat me up, I'm done. My whole game is gone, then I don't have a job. So it's got to be like that short memory, boom, boom, be in the present, be in the now, keep going. So, and then what we're talking about when you have that massive trauma and you carry that around, like the medicine teaches you, like just like, you're good. Let that go. Drop the bags. For some of the phone calls I get on a daily basis, like it's hard to not carry that around, some of the people's trauma. So for myself personally, I need to go and do my own work to shed that weight and just be like, everything's good.
And the calls you're getting, they're from other guys from the league, or?
Yeah, and just through the networks. So there's military guys, there's first responders, there's CEOs of high end stuff. What I love to talk about is the transition, right? So transitioning from hockey and being a part of some of these military groups, understanding that we're very similar of, the accountability network, the locker room atmosphere, the identity. Some of these guys identify as a hockey player. Well, when they tell me, like, thank you for your service, good luck, I can't go and, like, take slap shots down the highway. Like, my skill set that I've come doesn't correlate directly to normal life. So I have to understand how to adapt. And I explain this to Donald. I've had a locker room since I was 5 years old. So just think about that. So just being in a locker room and listening to other people and their issues, right? So if one of the guys is like, man, the wife is just all over me right now, and I don't have to even voice that, but I can be like, man, I feel the same way. I'm not in this battle alone. These guys are actually dealing with the same stuff. I have been isolating just because I'm a stay-at-home dad now and I don't have a job. But I'm an alpha male. I was bred to go out and perform, and then now I'm not allowed to perform anymore. But being in that locker room again and that accountability network, right? So I've had guys on teams and fellow players that, like, if I let myself go or do something kind of, that wasn't chill, I would have 15 to 20, 25 guys being like, bro, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. But when we leave that, that locker room, that accountability network, we don't have that anymore. And it is huge to our core of what we need as a human is community. So that is my mission now, is to create that community atmosphere and, connecting the military guys to the athletes, because we are all so similar.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And again, trauma is trauma, and you can speak to that, and we're all so similar. So getting these athletes and these military guys together and seeing the healing and the community, and these guys knowing that they have someone to talk to at any point for anything, and I'm opening up my network to them and vice versa. It's amazing.
So it's fun because so I invited Kyle to come over to, we had a Vietnam veteran breakfast, and brought over a couple of guys to, just kind of mingle in. And it's funny because the Vietnam veterans were like, threw their arms around Kyle and Hayden. Hayden's another special forces guy that I brought in because I just want him to be around more guys, stay connected. But that's the piece, right? Is that connected piece. I feel like I talk about the Rat Park all the time, and it becomes the same exact thing, right? We need to create something in the community where we can all know that we belong. And it's like, so for you have a locker room. For me, it was either a squad or team or whatever room, right? And you just know, like, no matter what you do, you're going to be in the chow hall together, right? You're going to be in the team room together. You're always going to be, any military person out there can think about it. Like, when were you ever going to go somewhere alone? Like, if you had to get ready for deployment, you were going to, you were going to go get your medical together. You're going to go get chow together. You're never not going to be doing something together. Yeah. Right. And so it's interesting because, and I don't know how it felt for you when you were getting out, but for me, when I was getting out, I was like, okay, yeah, it's like you kind of put it in your paperwork. And as soon as you put in your paperwork, it's like, nobody is around you. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's like you got this, like, illness, right? Where nobody wants to be around you, where these people, like, respect you, then they still kind of maybe come by and give you, like, knuckles or whatever, but they're like, yeah, you're on your way out, man. I go ahead and take off. But you know that, like, wow, I still need those people, or I need somebody in my life because we're going through difficult stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, whether it's simply training or just being away from family or whatever else it is, there's just no reason for you not to feel connected. And like you were talking about the psilocybin, it's like serotonin on steroids, right? And it gives you that connected piece where some of the circuitry that you might have, you feel super disconnected. If you have PTSD, you feel numb, right? You don't feel like you're a part of your community, and your brain at some point starts to shut down and says like, hey, this isn't working for me. I don't like these signals. So I start to become more and more numb. The only way to open that back up is to start to like heal by being around other people, having that shared experience. Like you said, the wife saw my case and you're like, totally get it. Me too. We're in the same boat. And the next thing you know, you don't feel so isolated. I can be in a room with people and feel alone, or I can be with just one or two people and feel like I'm surrounded by my people. Right?
Well, you say
different.
your people, right? There's 700 people on the planet that get to do what I do every year. And there's like almost like a home, like you've walked in my shoes, you get it. Where when you get out and you're not around the other military guys, which is your family, it doesn't matter. They don't get it. It's hard to open up to those other people that haven't walked in your shoes and understand the grind, right?
That's interesting too, because we had that with I think it was Steve, the Dogs of War.
Yes.
He had the same experience of, if you haven't been in this position, I'm not gonna connect with you if you're not a military guy. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna connect with the civilian population. And
superhero syndrome. Superhero syndrome. We talked about that,
And that same piece, like, that's one of the things that he said was like, you're not going to know the acronyms, you're not going to know the culture, the community, any of those pieces, and I'm not going to connect with you at all. It's just not going to happen. And that's something that I think does happen, whether it's making sure that we understand that there is a connection between the pro athletes in the military community, whether that's civilians and and vets kind of coming together in a different way, but it is there.
Plus by APN is an official sponsor of the Harder Than Healing podcast. Plus by APN treats the root causes of mental health issues with neurotechnology like deep TMS, ketamine-assisted therapy, and stellate ganglion blocks, so you can get relief from symptoms and find long-term healing. Schedule a free consultation and find your treatment match at plusapn.com. That's PLUSAPN.com.
I think, like we were talking about in the last piece of this, there's a term, and it's Tiffany, you're using it, about the sensitivity, having a general trauma-informed, right? I think what's exciting to me is, like, what I hear you guys describing, I think about my theater background, and I think about the shows that I would put on, and the feeling of camaraderie backstage. You've been working for months, weeks or months, whatever it is, but the feeling backstage before you're about to go on stage, there is no more electric place that I've ever experienced, right? And that includes our huddle right before we won our first title in high school, which is about the highest level I got to in a big organized way. But the electricity of, we've been working so hard, we're about to put on this show, I have your back, you have my back, whatever bullshit we went through during the rehearsal process, it doesn't matter now, because that audience is out there, and we're going to do it for them, and we're going to do it for us, right? And we have all our sacred rituals. You ask any theater company, right? The same way, I'm sure, in every locker room you were in, you had your own.
Well, we all need each other. We talked about it, and this is the sensitivity piece that I want to make sure and 100% want to be sensitive. But that feeling, whatever that word is, because that is that feeling that we're talking about is pretty special, very special. So, and it's kind of bringing that core together, because when you're in that room and you see the time ticking down and you're looking around.
Can you hear the crowd? Depending on what's the arena, by the way? What's the arena where you can really
they're pumping everybody up, right?
Yeah.
And then, and it's almost like gladiator stuff, right? And you're looking around and you're like, we need each other right now. Like, this is all we got. Well, I'm in the bellows of Madison Square Garden. I'm ready to let's go. We're ready to rock.
You told me that story one time, and I remember the way you told it, and it was funny because you paused and you said, you know, I want to watch my language. And it was the same thing that Jason and I were talking about earlier, but you said, like, you know, that they're the enemy, right? And you said you're going in there.
Survival.
Yeah, and these people, like, I mean, whether it's fans from another team or not, like, you're going to Madison Square Garden, that is not a friendly place. I don't care who you are.
And you
right?
talked about like the pre-night, like there's a lot of nights that I knew I had to be in a hand-to-hand combat with another guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, fear was definitely one of the emotions, but probably not getting a great night's sleep.
Right. Well, and to your point earlier, like, if you, so you know you're a good player, you know you're doing good things, you're trying your hardest, you're trying your best. This guy somehow, you know, does whatever he does, and you don't feel like you did enough, right? And I'm thinking, like, almost every guy on the team is going to feel that way if somebody gets hurt or if things don't go the way that they're supposed to. But the bottom line is we're absolutely 100% trying as hard as you possibly can. You're doing all the training, you're doing all the everything, you're worrying about everything that you're supposed to be worried about. And it does, like, you're going into this arena and they feel like there's these millions of people that just want you to fail, right? And it's
That's
just
crazy.
And so it's
enemy
just like,
territory.
yeah,
Like,
100%.
when we're on the road, right? All we have is those 20 guys.
Yeah.
That's all. That's it. That's all we have.
Yeah.
And we're in MSG. Where I'm playing for the Devils or whatever. It's intense. Like it's awesome. And I was talking to like a psychologist after I was done, and I'm like, "What do you like to do?" I'm like, "Well, I probably, you know, a normal day for me is, you know, 10, 15 beers and go down the ski slope 80 miles an hour as fast as I can." And they're like, "What?" And they're like, "You're addicted to adrenaline." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I've been doing it for 25 years."
Yeah.
Right. And like that, whatever that feeling is, that at the minute before you walk through those gates, or you know, the stage opens or whatever, we're reenacting that now with the ceremonies we're doing, the journeys, and it will be just like this, and it's a very ceremony aspect of it, but we're all going and doing this journey together. We call it the hero's journey.
And you're talking about the psilocybin.
Yeah.
And you guys have
But it can be any medicine. It's with the intent, right? We're doing it with intent, but it's there is some fear to it. There's a stigma to it. But at that point, when you're holding that medicine in your hand and you're looking around, and we've done the prep talks and we've done all the, you know, you're here, you've done the journey to get here. Now all we have is we're trusting in each other to do it together. And that is the same feeling as going through that stage, or like that anticipation, the fear.
going into the garden.
Yeah, and it's like you can't undive, you know? Like you got the ticket, you enjoy the ride.
We we could talk about this a lot. I know, because I know we got to wrap this up in a few minutes. I wonder, Kyle, if there's anything else for our listeners who are tuning in, if there are any sort of reflections you have on healing, right? Because we started the episode talking about triggers and how a lot of time triggers can be that highway to trauma, right? Where it's like, ooh, we get a trigger, and then all of a sudden that box we got buried in the back of the closet, zing, we're back to it, right? And you're now in the healing game. And so I wonder if you can just share, we close every episode with this phrase, "You're worth the healing." I wonder what your take is on that phrase.
Oh man, that's a beautiful phrase. But just to kind of hammer down what we're talking about is just the community. It's the biggest part of that. There's healing, for what I'm seeing, and personally, and I speak to this just from my experience and what I've seen with the success of some of the guys that come. But you know, at the ranch, we have 3 kind of main pillars of what we lean into, and it's education, healing, and community. And it's not just one thing. It's like language is a massive part of it. A lot of people come to us very negative, very pissed off. And, you know, so help change that language beforehand. But like what we talked about, for the first time, or in a long, long time, for some of these guys, it's the first time they get to really love themselves and give themselves the grace to love themselves again. So, and then the integration part of that is explaining to them, like, you've seen kind of the light now. Remember that, like, you are awesome. You are the disease. You are also the antidote. You have the power to be negative. You have the power to be positive.
Wow.
You really, it screamed at me, I have the power to do whatever I want. And at the time, I didn't feel that way. I was almost like a old car that was not allowed in the demolition derby anymore. And it was like, you got to just go away. Right. And it's giving people their power back. And in a community, and understanding that we're all from different walks of life, but we're all connected. And you're kind of giving yourself you're worth the healing, like, and then the medicine shows you that. And a lot of times we have to, like, guys particular, they'll come to us when they're at the very bottom. But you have to, another thing too is, like, you have to have the darkness to see the light. Right. So almost leaning into that darkest part of your life to have the beauty of it. And the hero's journey is all of it. So you signed up for this. We all did. Life is not just roses, but if you do the work, you'll get the benefit, and that's the beauty of it.
So when you said the antidote as well, and I'm thinking, when we were talking about it, we said that, or you were saying, like, we have the opportunity.
And responsibility.
Yeah. And it goes back to that's your responsibility. So when you're saying, like, yeah, it's your choice. Yes, it is. It is nobody else's. And although we also need community and people to support us, it's still your journey, right? Like, just because people are there and we need to learn how to ask for help and ask for support, the bottom line is it's still your responsibility. You know, you can choose it.
I think that the community piece is another kind of through line for all of these episodes. Has been, like, making sure that we're clear on being able to connect each other with community, and understanding that it is your responsibility to branch out, as it were, and to make those community networks more connected, you know, between the athletes and between, you know, the military community and civilians and theater and sports, whatever it is, to know that we've all had some sort of experience that connects us in a way. So it's not us just siloed in these different sections of the world trying to pretend that we're the only person who's ever dealt with it, or we're right. You know, it's I'm the only one who's ever done this thing. And I think a lot of the power that comes from that community experience is us recognizing, like, oh, I'm not the only one who struggled with feeling lonely or being by myself or feeling like the old car that's kind of pushed to the side kind of a gig.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to, so when you said, like, I'm going to be careful about what I say when it comes down to talking to the veterans, right, the Vietnam veterans. And then I would say, like, I have to be careful about what I talk about when I'm around professional athletes. But the bottom line is that we share so many things that are very similar. It should be how we bridge the gap, as opposed to how we say, like, well, they're not supposed to say that, or I'm not supposed to say this. Like, if we just get past that, we can get to a place where the common language unites us, as opposed to, you know, pushing us apart.
Well, and it's that piece that we had with the Dogs of War. It's that even though we may not have had the same experience, and clearly I haven't been in combat, so I don't know what that looks like. But even though we haven't had the same experience, we have all had that experience of suffering or of pain or
trauma is trauma.
And it's being able to bridge that gap in a way, and allowing other folks to have the chance to kind of peek behind the curtain, as it were,
and focusing on the common instead of the opposites, right? Like,
absolutely.
I think part of what I observe is that people will get defensive about a particular identity aspect often when it's all they feel like they have. And so,
that's the biggest thing that is, like, I've committed myself. My first kind of passion out of hockey was helping the NHL, the Colorado NHL Alumni Association, which is a chapter of the NHL alumni, right? So for all the guys that live in Colorado, it's we're raising money to give back to the game that's given us everything, but also a big part of it is mental health and making sure that the guys are good, because the guys aren't good. There's a lot of guys that are struggling with addiction, you get knee, shoulder, a couple years back to back, you're addicted to opioids because that's just boom, boom. That's what we've been given. Like I talked about before, like I was given a script for 150 pills at training camp with Ambien. Didn't even know what it was. 23 years old. So like giving them education is a huge part of what we do. There's hope for one, and there's a tool that you can try and use when you're ready to get you out of this funk. And a lot of it is identity. From 3 to 5 years old, every day I'd have a hockey stick in my hand, just dedicating my life to this craft. At 33, 34, 29, whatever it is, and they say, or an injury, your body just can't do it anymore.
Right.
And that is the similarity of the military guys and the hockey of like, I've trained, a portion of my life or my entire life to be so good at this one thing, and I'm not allowed to do it anymore. But again, there's so many, everyone will have this at one point in their life.
Right.
For the athletes, a little earlier than most.
Oh, man, you try to tell a teacher that the way they've been teaching for 30 years isn't the right way to teach. That's hard because so much of their identity and their self-worth is wrapped up in that. And part of what you have to remind someone in that situation is you were doing the best, listen, you're doing the best you could with the info you had at the moment, and your value as a human being is beyond just this one aspect of your identity.
Yes, the self-worth, what you just said, right? And it takes the medicine sometimes, a lot of times,
To sort of like,
to figure that out for yourself, because you can hear it from other people, but the medicine will be like, wow, I am way more than a hockey player. I've mastered something. I've mastered something from, I had a goal and I accomplished it. Why can't I do that again? The answer is you can.
man, look at that. Everybody who's listening, fucking take notes, dude. That's
I saw
the
Malibu
shit
Keith
right
back there shaking his head. He likes it.
Why can't I do it again? Oh, brother.
Well, you can. The answer is you can.
I mean, we're just meeting here. I just started my own company for the first time a year ago with the incredible blessing and support of my wife and kids. But yeah, trying to look myself in the mirror, 43 years old, now 44, and be like, A, I love you, and B, you can learn how to do something new. That's a trip. And I also know it's a trip to do that when you're 16 or when you're 23. So
anytime you take on any kind of new endeavor, it's always a trip.
Yeah, man.
And as long as you can start with that baseline of like, I'm good and I love what it is that I bring to the playing field, then you have something to work with. And I think that as long as you can start with that piece of it, then you have somewhere to go.
It's a meaning and purpose.
There we go.
And we're going to throw, Kyle, I know we're going to want to throw some of your resources in the show notes for sure, everybody, so you guys can keep up with Kyle and see the great work that he's doing, all the people he's supporting. As is always the case. I mean, Kyle, we got to have you back, dude.
Yeah.
This is
would love to.
tremendous.
This is the tip of the iceberg, I think.
Right on, man. That's what we say all the time. So I don't know, fellas, closing thoughts?
Thanks for coming and sharing your story. Being vulnerable and putting it out there, and also, the story of the inspiration, being able to recognize, like, yeah, even though this has been such a huge piece of my world for such a long time, after, having some kind of getting knocked around a little bit, you kind of gotten back to baseline, which is cool. It's really nice.
One of the conversations that we've had, I've enjoyed that are, just such the similarities, with needing that connection. And a lot of times, man, the military guys are very, very able to say middle finger to everybody. I'm going to isolate. I'm cool. I can stay home and, I don't need anybody. The bottom line is we do, right? And the more people that come out and say that the connection is important, hopefully we get more people doing it, all right? So that we can continue to support people and pull people into our network of warriors. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for, still trying to push through like we always do and help out those people in need and wearing the cape for us, because it's huge. So
yeah, just education and the tools there when you're ready.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, everybody. This wraps an extra special episode 8, Harder Than Healing. This has been the Triggers episode, Fubar, Snafu.
Yeah.
You call it, doesn't matter what you call it, one thing remains, the kerfuffle.
The kerfuffle.
One thing always remains the same, and that is, of course, you are worth the healing. See you all next time.
Hi, my name is Watika Lean, and I am the CEO of Warrior Now. And I want to thank you for listening to Harder Than Healing, produced in partnership with All Points North and Warrior Now. This podcast is recorded on the APN campus in Edwards, Colorado. Warrior Now is a nonprofit organization that provides veterans a whole health approach through peer-to-peer services. For more information, you can contact us at info@warriornow.org or pod@harderthanhealing.com. You can also find us on all social media platforms at Warrior Now. Like, share, or subscribe for new episodes. Thank you.